Murder, robbery, race and the justice system, identity, all on the backdrop of Harlem, New York, is a taste of what you'll read in Monster by Walter Dean Myers. Monster is about a 16-year-old boy, Steve Harmon, that is on trial for felony murder. Is he guilty? Who knows? But as we go through this novel, we learn so much about different perspectives, different opinions that seem to consistently revolve around the color of your skin and where you grew up and who you grew up with. Some of the elements and characters that we find in this particular novel show the different diversities that exist within a community. It shows how communities can come together at times, and then even how your community can be the main entity that goes against you. Monster by Walter Dean Myers has been a eye-opening experience for me as the reader and also as an educator, because it really challenges me to look at the world from my students' perspective, specifically my students that come from the more rougher around the edges neighborhoods, or the ghetto, or the hood as they would like to call it. And specifically having an understanding of how at times you can be found or seen as guilty by association. I really enjoyed this novel, number one, because of the story that it tells about identity and reflection and responsibility. I also enjoyed this novel when it focuses on the family and how even when the family is trying to do their best for their child to develop and grow, at times kids will be kids. And with this understanding, while reading through this novel, really trying to understand the psyche of a young adolescent or a young adult in Steve Harmon's perspective, or Steve Harmon's case. What I find most familiar is the guilty by association concept, that just because of where I'm from or who I hang out with, I'm automatically seen as that type of person. Steve Harmon's attorney, Kathy O'Brien, strived to the end to make sure that she separated any type of connection that some of these other characters like Richard Bobo Evans, Mr. King, as well as Osvaldo Cruz from Steve Harmon, because again, guilty by association, Osvaldo being a member of the gang that in order to get in, you had to fight one of the gang members. You had to go up to a random stranger and slice them in the face just to talk about initiation. Some of that stuff is just crazy. But most definitely that these are some of the elements and some of the concepts that were presented throughout the novel. One specific thing that I really enjoyed about reading this novel as well is how you got to read it. Not only were we reading this novel from Steve Harmon's perspective, but Steve Harmon kept a journal that they permitted him to have in prison, and he basically filled it with his perspective, his point of view of what was going on in his felony murder trial. And having this experience of just reading from Steve's perspective, but then also seeing it from a movie angle, really gave you this feeling that like you were involved. You had a say, you had a connection to what was going on, because it's like front row seats, like live and in living color. It was amazing. And one passage that I really enjoyed the most about this particular novel is actually on the last page of the novel. This is said by Steve. This is one of his journal entries, his last journal. That is why I take the films of myself. I want to know who I am. I want to know the road to panic that I took. I want to look at myself 1,000 times to look for one true image. When Miss O'Brien looked at me, what did she see that caused her to turn away? What did she see? As we continue reading through this novel, the question will continue to rise. Who is he? Is he guilty? Is he innocent? Who is Steve Harmon? Is he this monster that Sandra Petrocelli has described him to be? Or is he an innocent 16-year-old African American boy that was just caught up with the wrong people at the wrong time. You can guess until you finish reading. Monster by Walter Dean Myers.